Hello and welcome to today's topic. It's on fireflies. Thank you so much for joining me today. Fireflies, many of you probably remember from childhood. I, of course, have fond memories of seeing fireflies in Nebraska when I was a kid. And many of you have probably collected them and put them in a mason jar and put them next to your bed as a light. So they've got lots of great memories. Another reason we're doing fireflies today is it is summer. We officially started summer about a week ago, and this is when the fireflies are most active in the warm summer nights when they're flying around with their courtship rituals, right? And also because we're doing fireflies, because it kind of relates to tomorrow's event, which is the 4th of July. And so I like to correlate the animal or plant that I'm drawing with the holiday. And so fireflies, when they're flying in the sky, and in the dark, they kind of look like fireworks, right? So we're going to study fireflies and not fireworks today on the 4th of July, okay? And also because they've been revered for thousands of years, especially in the Far East. And so they have a long history in culture and myth and folklore. And so another reason we're doing fireflies, not just today, but in general, is because many of them are threatened. Some species are even threatened with extinction. And so there's lots and lots of reasons. Just really quickly, of course, light pollution is one of them, because fireflies are famous for communicating with the flashing lights on their abdomen, which we'll talk more about in a minute. And so when it's really bright, it really confuses them. Just when, like when sea turtles are trying to come to a beach to lay their eggs, and they get really confused with all the lights on the beaches. And so anyway, light pollution is a big threat, okay? And also, habitat loss. Much of that is deforestation, especially in the tropics. Many of their wetland habitats are being converted to palm oil plantations. So please try to avoid palm oil, although it is in many, many products. And they were also endangered by collecting, especially starting in the 1940s. Millions and millions of fireflies were collected for their the substance that makes them glow. And so, that's not so good. Also, they're endangered from pesticides, of course, because pesticides get in the water, and they often live near aquatic wet habitats and live in aquatic vegetation and meadows near waters where pesticides are applied. So anyway, there's a lot of threats to fireflies, from light pollution, bounties on their abdomens for collecting their glow, deforestation, palm oil, and pesticides. So anyway, I like to, in these series of sketching tutorials, talk about animals that are threatened so that we bring awareness to them. Okay. And so anyway, we're going to now talk a little bit about where they fit in the scheme of life. And so, I always start these sketching tutorials by talking a little bit about biology and classification, and of course, a lot about anatomy, because that makes it so much easier then to actually draw them, because you really are familiar with them and you're familiar with the parts of their body and such. So anyway, the ladybugs, of course, are a beetle, and beetles are insects. They're in the class Insecta. And these are some beetles I saw in Peru. And these are just gorgeous, aren't they, with their iridescent colors. So insects, beetles are part of the insect class. And as insects, they have this hard exoskeleton. Oh, let's see. Let me think. There we go. They have this hard exoskeleton. They have 3 pairs of legs, which sometimes you can see, sometimes you can't. They have 1 pair of antennae. And let's see, what else? And they have 2 pairs of wings. And so here's another really beautiful image showing those 3 pairs of legs and showing the 1 pair of antennae. Now, various beetle species can be identified not only by their size and shape and color and where they live in the world, but also by the shape of their antennae and the shape of their legs. And we're not going to get too in detail about that, but beetles are in order within the class Insecta. And so the ladybug, I keep saying ladybugs, the lightning bugs or fireflies are a beetle. And so, what was I going to say about that? Oh, yes. So these are the most numerous animal on Earth. There's up to perhaps 400,000 species of beetles, and maybe even more, especially small ones in the tropics and the tropical forest canopy that we haven't even discovered yet. So that accounts for about 25% of all living animal species. So beetles are everywhere. And so here's just a few examples. This is ladybugs and the life cycle of a ladybug. But basically, you're probably really familiar with ladybugs who are beetles, also mealworms and flower beetles that get into your cupboards, rhinoceros beetles, dung beetles, scarab beetles, like the beetles that were revered by the ancient Egyptians, and weevils, which are one of the largest families of beetles. And so here's some images showing some different beetles and especially kind of their different colors and sizes and different kinds of antennae. So some beetles, oops, sorry here. Some beetles even have these antennae that are like books, pages of a book that they can use to help smell the pheromones of the female. And some of the lightning bugs use those to smell the pheromones of the female, especially if they're not one of the light-producing lightning bugs, because not all lightning bugs have light. Okay, and so all beetles have these 2 pairs of wings, just like most all insects. But what's really unique, what classifies an insect as a beetle, is that they have this hard outer pair of wings that aren't really used in flight. So when they take off, like this ladybug is taking off, they will lift those 2 colored parts, which we call elytra. And there's only 1 pair of flight wings under that, and that's what they actually fly with. So they're not, you can imagine they're not as, as able to fly well or fly far or fly high compared to other insects, maybe like dragonflies or honeybees. They're a little bit more, what would you say the word is, kind of clumsy flyers. But they were among the first insects that evolved and the first pollinators, evolving about the same time as the first flowering plants like magnolias. Oh, let's see. Yes. Elytra. Yes. Pranjal, you're mentioning elytra. And Barbara, it's okay that you're late. Another thing about beetles how you can recognize them is, so they have this pair of hard outer wings, and they've got this straight line down the middle. So that's different than like the true bugs, which are in a different order of insects, which have an X on their back. So these guys have a straight line down their back, which is where the 2 pairs of wings are. And then they have this triangular shape. It's called a scutellum. And you can see that easier in some beetles than others. That's why I showed you this picture of this green beetle. And here's just another cool one, just showing some neat patterns. Again, beetles live all over the world in all continents except Antarctica, in all habitats. There's even aquatic beetles. But of course, the lightning bugs aren't aquatic, but they do live in moist environments often. And here's an example of a weevil, which is a family of beetles. And it's, I think, just about one of the largest families of beetles. And there's an image of an aquatic beetle that swims. And yep, let's see what else. And there's another image showing the beetle with the scutellum, that little triangular plate. And some beetles have really kind of beefy legs like this. And some of them have really beefy things that look like pinchers or horns on them, like the rhinoceros beetles. So that's just kind of a little tour of the order we're talking about today, because lightning bugs aren't a true bug, and they're not a fly either, like a firefly. They are in the order Coleoptera, which is the beetles. And so just a little bit more about the parts of the beetle we're going to want to notice when we're sketching them, because of course today we are going to go ahead and do a sketching demonstration, and you can follow along hopefully. But don't worry if you don't have any supplies, that's okay. And again, if you came in late to this new this live event, you can start over later on and watch the replay. But also, if you're new, please say new in the chat box so I can say hi to you. I do notice most of the names that I already recognize, like Cheryl and Roberta and Mary Ellen, Christine, Milana, Barbara, Pranjal, etc. So anyway, so parts of the beetle. They've got this head, although the lightning bugs, you can't see their head very well because the thorax is kind of large and kind of hangs over it. And then there's the third segment, the abdomen, and then that scutellum we talked about. And then under the part of the abdomen is where that light producing, the bioluminescent lantern is that's on the lightning bugs. Let's see. And then here's a real picture of a rhinoceros beetle, just showing it again, kind of open up so you can see the membranous wings that they fly with, and then the hardened elytra that they lift to get out of the way when they fly, and then the parts of their abdomen. And they have usually, I think, 11 segments to their abdomen, although you can't always see all of those segments. And then here you also see all the parts of the leg, and that can be really challenging to draw. So don't worry about that too much today, but I will give you some other reference photos to look at while we're drawing. And then here's a whole lot of text. We don't have to look at all of this. This is not a science class, but it's just another really cool image you might want to look at later on in the replay to look more at the parts. Again, this is a rhinoceros beetle, which I've used in other sketching tutorials, but it is similar in many ways to the lightning bugs. Okay, and so moving on from the class Insecta and the order Coleoptera, we're going to go to the family of lightning bugs. All lightning bugs are in the family Lampyridae, although we did mention earlier, somebody had mentioned glowworms, and sometimes that's a common name that's applied to this family, although there is another smaller family. I forgot the name of it, but there is this another smaller family that are also colloquially named as glowworms, and they glow too. So it's kind of funny that not only lightning bugs glow, and not all lightning bugs glow. That's a mouthful. So anyway, let's see, where are we? Moving on. So the lightning bugs. Now, nearly all of the larvae do glow, and that often that glowing is like warning coloration to warn predators of their toxicity. And that evolved first, the glowing, in the larval stage. And it wasn't until they think millions of years later, scientists think, that the glowing was used in the adult for their courtship rituals. So anyway, a common thing about all the lightning bugs is the larvae all glow, but not all of the adults. There are different groups or different genera, especially those on the West Coast where I live here in Oregon. There are species here, but they don't glow. Usually only the ones kind of east of the Rockies are the ones that glow. And within their family, there's about 2,000 species. Remember, I mentioned that in beetles, all of beetles might be as many as 400,000 species, which accounts for about 25% of all animal species on Earth. So within those 400,000 species, this is a pretty small family, about 2,000 species in this family. And here in North America, which most of the viewers, I think, are from, there's about 125 species. And most of those species, especially the ones that glow, do live in the southeastern United States. Okay. In the chat box, who does live in the southeast or has lightning bugs where you live? Say me. Let's see. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah. So, like I said, most lightning bugs do glow, and they are nocturnal, and they have this courtship display with the lights. The ones that don't glow, those guys are more day active, and they find their mates through antennae that are sensing the female's pheromones. Okay, great. We've got lots of me's in Massachusetts, or is that Maine? Sorry, Kim, I forget. Is that Maine or Massachusetts? And Virginia, Pennsylvania is really, really famous also. And the Great Smoky Mountains area is very famous for its lightning bugs. Okay. And then this family is also characterized as being pretty more soft-bodied than some of those other beetles that I showed you, with those really strong, hard elytra, like the rhinoceros beetles I showed you. These guys are known as being more soft-bodied with kind of more leathery elytra, and they're smaller, you know, like more like the size of your fingernail or so. Oh, yeah. I wanted to say that this is an excellent book. This is where I got a lot of my information, and there's a ton more information in this book, Silent Sparks, The Wondrous World of Fireflies by Sarah Lewis. And you can also find a wonderful TED Talk by Sarah Lewis on YouTube. So that's an excellent resource if you want to learn a lot more. It's a whole book on fireflies. And so anyway, fireflies, of course, are named because they have this fiery look to them. The courtship display is created by this bioluminescent organ, or we also call it a lantern, on their abdomen, on the last few segments of their abdomen. And the males have it, and the females glow as well. The females, many of those species of females don't have wings, and they hang out more in the vegetation, and they just wait for the male to fly to them during courtship. And so anyway, oh yeah, Hank said you're reading that book. Great, great. Oh, Heather, the firefly is a state insect of Pennsylvania. Oh, that's really cool. That's wonderful. Where was I going to say? Oh, yeah. This is kind of complicated, so I have to read this to you because I needed to memorize it. Okay, so how is this bioluminescence produced? Okay, it's Sarah Lewis's book. In the book, she says it's produced by oxidation of luciferin, which is produced in cells with rich oxygen supply. And so the insect can control the flashing by controlling the oxygen. So when air is added, the luciferin, in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase, is almost instantly oxidized and releases the energy as light. And almost all of the energy produced is light. So compared to like a light bulb, like in your home, that releases a lot of heat and you can actually burn your hand by touching it, this is a very cool light, and it's very efficient. So almost all of the energy that's created does go towards producing the light. And so again, they can control how long each flash is and how many flashes by controlling the oxygen that goes to those cells that have the luciferin in them. Isn't that amazing? And did I mention this before, that I think that millions of years ago, when these guys were evolving, they were first used just in the larvae, but later on, the adults began to glow and use that ability to make flashes for their courtship displays. And so in the summertime, the adult males will fly quite low in the forest, but generally their habitat has to be pretty open so that they can see each other. So they generally live in more open forests or meadows or grasslands or near wetlands, near creeks and streams, because they like to be warm and moist. And they like to fly when they can really see well. So, not generally the full moon. Oh, hi, Bev. Nice to have you here. And so each species of firefly that fluoresces does they have different kinds of flashes. So, one species might go flash, flash, flash. Another species might go flash, flash, flash. And so they can recognize each other. So kind of like bird songs, you probably have birds in your backyard, whether it's a cardinal or a blue jay or a robin, and they have all their courtship songs that they sing in the spring, right? And each one is unique to that species. It's the same with these beetles, that they have a unique pattern of flashing. So the males will be flashing, they'll be flying around in the open habitat. And the females, many of them whom are flightless, they will be hanging on to low vegetation, and they will be waiting for the males to flash. And if they like the flash, just like if a robin female likes the song of a male, they'll sing back, right? And so the female firefly sings back by doing a flash afterwards. And she can decide when to flash and how as well. Now, and there is kind of a trick to this, though, because there are certain species of firefly females that are predatory, and they will actually eat the males of a different species. And so what sometimes they will do is they will flash the kind of flash that would attract a different male species, and then they will eat it when it comes to mate. Isn't that cruel? Well, life is hard, isn't it? Oh, well. Anyway, so I think I was going to say that. Yeah. Okay, great. So let's keep going. Yeah. And so I've been really lucky to see lots of fireflies like you guys have. Not so much on the East Coast. I haven't really traveled there, but I've seen fireflies in the Caribbean and in Jamaica. I've seen them in Central America, South America, and Borneo. And there's nothing more magical, as many of you know, than seeing millions of fireflies. And so that's why, we really want to try to preserve them. Earlier, I did mention some of the reasons that fireflies are endangered from both climate change that I didn't mention before, deforestation, habitat loss, pesticides, and light pollution. So we don't want to lose them. We want to be careful. Okay, and so here's a close-up image of that light. Now, they can have sort of different colors of this light, but usually it's kind of a yellowish or greenish or orangish, but it does vary with species. This image also shows that kind of a characteristic color pattern of a lot of the lightning bugs, of being sort of this, having some yellow on them, having some red, and having some black or brown, but they do vary within the species. And this shows the bottom part with those abdominal segments and how some of them make that light producing organ. Yeah, the bioluminescence, which lots of organisms use, a lot of different kinds of insects and other types of organisms bioluminescent. Lots of things in the ocean as well are bioluminescent. So yeah, here's a kind of a characteristic look to the fireflies. Many of the species do live like this. And like I said, in North America, there's about 125 species. Most of them are east of the Rockies and are in the southeast, especially the ones that glow in the dark. And so anyway, so let's move on. We're just about ready to start sketching. And this is the one we're going to draw today. Is the Big Dipper firefly. And this is the most common species in terms of numbers that we think that lives in the United States, and it lives in the Southeast. what else did I want to say about that? Any of you guys ever see the Big Dipper? It's called the Big Dipper because the male does a thing that's called like a dip. Like, have you ever seen certain species of hummingbirds will do a courtship display where they do a big U shape? This kind of the same as this Big Dipper firefly. And so a close-up of it, let's see, we're going to draw two of them. So here's a close-up. And so you can see his characteristic, a pair of antennae. They've got, I think, about 11 segments. Those segments do vary with the species, though. Oh, yes, Pranjal, you've seen that male Anna's hummer do that. Yeah. You see the 3 pairs of legs and the 2 elytra. And in this species, the Big Dipper, they have the yellow on the edges of the elytra and the yellow on the thorax, sorry, and a kind of a brown spot in the middle with the pink on the sides. So anyway, basically, I think of these 6 parts. And we talk about blocking in, proportions, angles, alignments, negative shapes, and flow lines. And don't worry, as we're drawing with the video, I'll go slow and kind of talk about these some more. But basically, the concept is blocking in is where you're thinking about drawing first in these obvious shapes. So like this whole body is kind of a one big, long, thin oval, right? And it's divided up into 3 other ovals. And that's when we start thinking about the concept of proportions. So that means what is one shape in proportion to another. So kind of thinking about how the head is maybe about half as long as the middle thorax, and how the thorax maybe is about as long as the the elytra there. So that kind of thing. And then angles. So looking at your critter, not necessarily as thinking about it as a critter or a plant or an animal, but thinking of it as, say, like 90-degree angles, like here, this angle made by the leg and the body, or this angle made, 90-degree angle made here by the different segments of the leg, that kind of thing. Another thing I like to have you think about when you're drawing are alignments. So what structures are aligned with other structures? So like you can kind of see the body, these elytra are kind of parallel. There's kind of 3 parallel lines here. And how, let's see, this line is kind of in a cross perpendicular to this other one. What else? Alignment. Let's see. The 2 legs are sort of aligned across from each other, that kind of thing. Okay, good. Yeah. And then negative shapes. So this image here has lots of great negative shapes. That just means the negative shapes or spaces, the part that does not, that is not the actual animal. So that's basically these white shapes. And that's why I usually in these sketching demonstrations show the animal on a white background to make it more simple. Oh, hi, Joanna. Nice to have you here, new. Make sure if you have just joined us to start with the replay, which will be ready a few moments after we're done here. Okay, anyway, negative shapes, right? And then flow lines. That's the idea of, you know, when you're drawing, how your line flows around the object. So like here, there's a very gentle flowing of the whole body here, if you follow my mouse. Whereas the antenna are kind of going like kind of at a sharp angle, and it's not very gently flowing, right? Okay, so those are just my 6 steps to sketching success. You can learn more about that on my website at christineelder.com, which I can tell you about later on if you want. Okay, and so then we're going to be drawing the legs, and as we draw the legs, you'll have this close-up that's a little bit easier to see. And, you know, I'm not going to get a lot into anatomy today. I could take forever to teach you all that. But basically, there's these main parts to the legs that we're going to want to draw, although we won't see them really well at the size we're drawing them. Although you're feel free to draw your beetle larger. You can draw it as large as your whole piece of paper if you'd like. But anyway, you see kind of this shoulder area here, and then this other part here. And then there's these little tiny parts, and there's different numbers of them depending on the families and the species. But I think you can kind of see about 3 parts here. And then there's this other little tiny part that's kind of a V. And then one last part that has the claw, like here, you can see the very end is a claw. Okay, so that's kind of complicated, but I'll show it to you while we're sketching. And then the antennae, I'll show that to you close up when we're sketching too. But you can see there's different parts, and every family of beetle and every species within the family, they have different numbers of antennal segments, and the antennae are shaped very differently in different families. And so here you can kind of just in general see that most of them are about the same size as each other, except for this one here, which is smaller. And I think there's 11 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right, there's 11. So we can try to get 11, but don't worry too much if you can't get all of them. Who's ready to get started? We're just going to use this mechanical pencil. And first, I'll just look at this guy. I'll kind of notice the parts of his body that we've already talked about, just kind of air drawing over it. Good, Joanna's ready. Just noticing those parts of the insect and the beetle. And I'm just going to draw a real quick, very light line so that I kind of know where I'm at here on the left there, the box. And then I'm going to mark the edges. He basically fills out that whole box. Oh, there we go. Wait. Okay, there we go. Yeah. There we go. I'm not going to touch the mouse again. Now I'm going to make some marks that just shows where his main body is. And this is the male because he's got the wings. Many species don't have wings, remember? And I'm marking with my pencil how wide it is and how long it is. So that's basically the head and the thorax and the abdomen. And we're just going to draw super light with a feather-like touch, as if you're barely touching the paper. Then we're going to look at the proportions of the head. So kind of noticing how the head, what size it is, and the 2 eyes. And I noticed that I was a little bit too far there to the right. So I'm going to fix it a little bit, but it doesn't really matter too much. But this is a good place. This is why we start so light and loose, so we don't mind changing a bit. We don't really have any dark marks on the paper. So anyway, now I'm going to do the head, the 2 circles of the eyes. The eyes are pretty large. You can't see it very well, but they're about, each eye is about 1/3 the size of the whole head. And then the middle part right there is where the mouth is going to be, which is kind of hidden under that head. Then that middle section, the thorax, that's orange and red. We're going to mark the size of that. And it's about twice the depth, I'd say, of the head and eyes. And you can see sort of some negative shapes there. And I'm just going to lightly erase a little bit. You see, I'm not erasing too much. Again, I'm using my pencil to notice the angle, because it is at an angle. So I'm going to fix that right now because I was just drawing it straight. But I'm noticing that he is at an angle. He's kind of turned a bit. So that right part of his pronotum or thorax there is a little bit lower, as you see. It's kind of at an angle. So now we're just double checking the width and the depth of that middle section there, that yellow-red section. Now we're going to add the elytra and just kind of the abdomen. We're going to make a line down the middle very, very lightly. It's going to show where the 2 elytra are separated. Again, in the Lampyridae family, the lightning bugs, they have a pretty soft, leathery elytra compared to things like rhinoceros beetles. So we're going to draw each of those two leathery elytra first. And they're separated a little bit at the very bottom because they, eventually will totally separate so that he can fly away like we see in the one on the right. So I'm just now noticing the width and length and that negative shape there, that little triangle between the thorax and elytra. And notice that right elytra is a little bit longer and wider than the left one, because again, he's kind of turning to his right, and we're seeing a bit more of his right side. So we're going to want to make that a little bit wider. And it is wider than it looks because notice the edges are yellow. So it's easier, make sure you're looking at the bigger image to the left of your screen, right above my head, and not so much the one I'm measuring with, because then you can really see the parts better. So now you see I'm just going a little bit more slowly and more carefully so I can fix things, like I'm making it a little bit wider right there, because it appears to be narrower than it is because the edges of the elytra are yellow, so they're not as obvious. So just make sure you are just noticing how wide it definitely the whole thing is, including those yellow edges. Remember, most lightning bugs kind of do have these characteristic yellow, red, and brown areas. They look pretty similar across most of the family. So now you see I'm just kind of double checking, and I'm going a little bit slower and pushing a little bit harder with my pencil to get that final outline. We are mainly just kind of doing the outline of these two individuals today, but then I'll show you a fast forward kind of the how I would add some color too. So we'll get the body pretty well before we add the antennae and legs, okay? So now we're going to work on the antennae, and so that's why I'm showing a better close-up for you. You have a better view of it than I did when I was drawing, so I'm not going to get a lot of detail. You might be able to get better detail than I do. And so I'm just first drawing a line that suggests where they are, and it doesn't matter too much because they move their antennae a whole bunch, so it doesn't have to be exact. It can be a different angle. Now you notice I'm counting. There's about 11 of them. Well, there are 11 that we can see, and they're pretty much all the same shape except for that second one. So again, this is kind of small for you to see in my drawing video that I'm showing, but hopefully you can see it a little bit better in the image, the large close-up image I have for you on the left. My first version of this, I just used a smaller image, and then I said, I think my students need to see it bigger, so I made it bigger for you, and I hope that helps. Okay, now we're going to look at the legs. And so I've got a close-up of the legs here for you in a minute. Oh yeah, wait, not yet, quite yet. I'm kind of fixing that shape. Sometimes it's a little bit hard when you're right-handed to do the right side of an animal because you'll kind of flatten it too much. So anyway, I was just fixing that. So now we're doing the legs. So I got a close-up of the legs here for you. And again, you can see these legs better on your screen. It's more close-up than I saw when I was drawing. So you might be able to do a much better job than I'm doing, especially if you wait to watch the replay and slow down and really look at all those parts. So do as I say, not as I do, like some parents and teachers have probably said to you before. Because again, you can see this better than I could when I was doing my sketching video here. Just measuring, showing where those little parts are coming out. It's kind of blurry, that one on the left, lower left. So Can't really see that too well. Again, just using my pencil to, in general, sort of measure where I'm at. So now I'm going to do a little bit more detail of each leg now that I've placed the leg. It's just like with the antenna where I was just placing the lines of the antennae. I like to do, I like to just get the outline down first, because especially if this were a live insect, like I would tell you to try to practice sketching live, he's going to walk away maybe. So you might not be able to get this much detail on your beetle. Anyway, again, your drawing can probably be better than mine and more detailed because you're going to be able to see those parts on that close-up of the left beetle, especially if you're watching from a big screen. And you might want to watch from a larger screen in case you are watching from your phone or a tablet. That's always an easier way to see this. Now, this middle left leg is kind of at a weird angle, so I wasn't able to show it very well, but just do the best you can. Again, you might want to spend more time watching this on the replay at the 1 hour mark so that you can do a better job on these legs if you want to. But again, this doesn't have to be like a formal biological illustration, but it is fun to be able to see the parts better, like we can see in this larger image. And if you came in late and if you didn't know, you can download this page, the Let's Sketch Fireflies page, from the link below where it says click here for Firefly sketching cheat sheet. Okay, so anyway, now back to the main beetle. I'm just going to kind of show where that color pattern is, that brown spot in the middle of the thorax, and then those kind of red parts on either side of it. And then I'm showing that yellow outline. And yeah, the yellow is on each elytra on either side. So again, we're going to just kind of do what I call the air drawing, where I'm just noticing those lifted elytra. And in this case, you can see kind of the ghosted out membrane of the wings. You see that kind of fuzzy body and the abdomen. You can see the segments of the abdomen and the glowing part. And you can see the legs, although they're kind of fuzzy too. So we'll just make the wings, the flight wings, and the legs kind of fuzzy. So anyway, as usual, I kind of get a place to start here where I start my head and I get just this oval of the whole body, just like I did before. And I measure the length of it, the basic kind of length and where that head starts there on the paper. That's why I usually start these with a box to make it really easy if you're a beginning sketcher. Mhm. And so I'm just going to get this really basic oval, and then we'll get the parts of the body next. Okay, bye, Sally. Come back next time. And then the elytra, just going to get that. So that's kind of a cross that we have here of the elytra going perpendicular to the body. Remember, the elytra is the name for those two hard outer parts of the wing that in most insects, like dragonflies, are wings that actually work. But the Coleoptera or beetle order has this hardened outer membranous cover called the elytra, which they just kind of lift out of the way, and it does help to stabilize them, but they're not like flapping them like a dragonfly or a bumblebee would. And if you like drawing insects, I've got a lot more of these sketching tutorials I mentioned in my Nature Nook, doing things like dragonflies, the ladybugs, and honeybees, and that kind of thing. Okay, Bernadette, take care. Thank you for donating. I really appreciate, Bernadette. You just click that donate button, and half of today's proceeds go to help Sammy. Okay, Sue, take care. Thanks for donating. I see that you donated already. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to get the head. A lot of the head is kind of covered, compared to the guy on the left. So you only see his eyes sort of a little bit. We'll put some more detail in those a minute. Then the thorax is kind of larger and a little bit fuzzy. You can kind of see some fuzziness. So that's, oh yeah, I decided it was too big. I decided the eyes were too big. That's right. Yeah, they sort of are foreshortened because the thorax is pretty big and it's kind of overhanging. He's flying away from us and sort of down. So just getting our bearings, looking around what we're going to do next. Just going to draw some lines for the antennae. We'll put a little bit, not so much detail in them as we did with the guy on the left. And sometimes I do like to show two poses of an animal in these sketching demos so that you can really see the different parts and the different angles, and you can practice sketching something twice. So a little bit more detail on those elytra, kind of getting the width and the length a little bit more specifically. And in this case, those light yellow outer edges really do show up better. So it really does help you to get the correct length and width. And that one on the left is a little bit foreshortened because it's going towards us. So the one on the right is a little bit longer, just slightly longer and skinnier than the one on the left. So just notice that as you're measuring, don't really trust your eyes, but do the measurement, and that'll really help you to ensure that you've got the right length and width of that right elytra compared to the foreshortened left elytra. And so I'm just drawing that outer yellow edge there. Now, oh yeah, I went back to the antennae, just darkening those up a bit and just going to show some cross hatches. Not a lot of detail, but just kind of suggesting that those antennae are segmented. Great. Hope you're keeping up here. Now we're going to work on the body there, that main body. That middle section, the thorax, is the section of the beetle that both the legs and the wings are attached to. So I'm just kind of showing it getting kind of a little bit fatter than I had it before and kind of where it ends. Because the segmented part of the abdomen is a different part. So we're just drawing the middle section right now. And it kind of like looks a little bit fuzzy because it's actually being blurred a bit by the flight wings right there. See the flying membranous wings. You can't really see them too well, especially against this background. But they are, flapping and allowing the beetle to take off and fly and do his courtship flights, attracting the females. The one on the right is a little bit more hidden because he is turned a bit to our left. So you see this left membranous wing a bit more. So you just kind of have to, quote unquote, wing it with drawing those because we can't see those very well. They'll just be sort of blurry, and that's fine. Now we're going to do this bottom segment, the abdomen. And that's where all the digestive and reproductive structures are, especially the reproductive structures, because the adult is relatively short-lived. So they don't spend a lot of time eating, or they don't migrate or anything either. Most of that internal structures are the reproductive structures, making the sperm and the eggs for reproducing. Most of the length of the life of these animals is their larval stage. I didn't mention that before, but they have, once they lay the eggs, they have a larval stage where they will live for several months, up to several years in some species. And those larvae kind of look like a miniature caterpillar, and they crawl around in the ground, and they're voraciously eating little tiny other insects. They are carnivores and predators. And the larvae of these beetles will eat earthworms and slugs and snails. So here's a close-up now so we can see those parts better. We're going to see that we see 8 sections there, kind of, pretty much 8, although the adults usually have 11, but they might be blurred or something. But we can kind of see 8 segments. And so notice, yeah, we were just noticing those 8 segments there and the white on the last 3. Good. A lot of you guys are sticking with us here. Glad to see that. Doing a great job. Now I'm using that yellow pencil to the left to keep track because it's really easy to lose track. And so I'm trying to keep track of each of those 8 segments. You don't have to be this exact, but I like to be. And again, your drawing can probably be more accurate than mine, especially if you're looking at this image that I've blown up on the left, because you can see this larger than I saw it. Heather, I don't know if they eat springtails. So anyway, keeping track and noticing those last 3 segments has the glowing part that looks larger and whiter. So now that I've placed those 8 segments, I'm going to draw them a little bit darker. And again, you can probably do a better job here because I was kind of just, I couldn't see it as well as you can now. You can see that there's actually a little bit of, it's not just an oval here that I'm drawing. You can see each of these segments kind of goes down and up and down and up. So you might just notice how those vary. And the brown part in those last 3 segments is narrower than the other segments because you can really see the light organ there. Again, just kind of being really careful, trying to notice that I've got each section. And, you know, you just want to notice how wide each section is compared to how long it is. So, you know, each segment is not a square. It's more of a narrow rectangle. Just kind of noticing those shapes. And then drawing those the white glowing lantern or tail lights, as you might want to call it. So I was trying to fix mine. I wasn't sure that I had it quite right. And of course, you can always get better and better the longer you spend. Joanna, you're welcome. So it's kind of hard to tell the light part from the dark part. So I'm going to darken that now. Now, of course, you can finish this off with colored pencils if you want, which I'll demo really quickly in a sec. But just going to darken that area so it's more obvious what part is the bioluminescent tail lantern and which part isn't. Now remember, each species of male firefly has a different pattern so that they can recognize each other when they're doing their courtship displays in midsummer. Okay, Pranjal, you're getting bored. That's great. No problem. See you next time. Bye-bye. So anyway, I'm just trying to fix that white part there, the bioluminescent part. So I just darkened it up a bit and so I can see it. I didn't finish the shadowing on this one, but you certainly could if you want. I'm just going to add some yellow pencil there for fun. I was going to do this whole thing in color, but I ran out of time. And I figured you would too, like we are now. So then I was just going to add the legs real quick, just really kind of ghost it out. They're just kind of blurry. So we're just going to do that. We remember they do have 3 pairs of legs, but in this angle, we only see that rear pair. And I'm just kind of smearing them with my finger just to make them look a little bit like they're in flight and moving. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me, Bev and Catherine and Heather, Doris, hello, Mary, Susan, Anna, Pranjal, Joanna, Sally, so many people. I really appreciate it. And I hope you learned something here and have a great day. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.